Okay, so my last video was me talking about why Hoyoverse is trying to get you to play Honkai Star Rail. And now that Star Rail is out, I played it for about 6 hours to tell you that you shouldn't play it. Probably. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTube. It's your Slime King, the Jima Man, and welcome to another video. Now this will sound hypocritical, but I like gacha gaming, I like Genshin, and I enjoyed my time playing Star Rail. So why am I telling you not to play it? Because this game is more of the same things that Genshin Impact has, for better or for worse. It will become apparent as you continue to play, so before I dig any deeper, let's start from the very beginning of this experience. Let's ignore all the Kafka simping and jump straight ahead to the real show. Picking your character. The obvious choice here is Tell. If you didn't pick Lumine in Genshin, then something is wrong with you. So redeem yourself and ignore the man. After this, we meet March the 7th, and Dan Hung. Hoyoverse, please spare me from the jargon and info dumps you love to put into your games, because the conversations I had with these two were almost insufferable. Honkai was filled with that, Genshin is starting to fill with that in Sumeru, and Star Rail is probably on par with Honkai Impact, with how many intelligible words with no context they like to throw at you. The story is a typical affair, but since we are here, it is important to note the absence of a Paimon-like entity acting as our intermediary. Instead, the MC has her own voice that does not speak all the time, but it still speaks. We are off to a good start. So obviously we are in an instance-based dungeon-like map with some mild exploration or platforming elements. For the next couple hours or so, the game begins to explain the combat system a little bit, which to be honest feels a little too long for my taste, as most RPG players or people who have played RPGs should get the basics rather quickly by now. But I digress. We'll talk about the combat systems in detail later, when I actually died. Eventually we will find ourselves about to complete the objective of boarding the elevator, but a cutscene ensues and we are greeted by this badass. Anyway, he wasn't much of a challenge, he's a tutorial boss, and he died, and now we get to the most important part of the whole game.
Why does it always have to get this exciting?
My love.
Anyway,
Himeko.
at least you're back.
You were as beautiful as the day you taught Kiana her final lesson.
You've been through a lot.
Okay, we talked to her, Himeko joins us temporarily, and we progress by finding Asta in the Herta space station. Then I did some polls. Got Jeopard somewhere on the good side of 20 polls. And I cursed my existence. Why couldn't that be Himeko instead, I screamed. Then when I thought it couldn't get any worse, we suddenly get attacked by the Legion. And now we need to investigate the attack. And it is in this quest that we are introduced to formidable foes. And it's a good time to talk about the combat system. Because the first time I tried fighting this formidable foe, I died. And it wasn't even close. And this is where we see the depth of the combat. I mean, I don't know if it's deep or complex, but this is where you get to see what happens when you need to take advantage of the systems in order to take or defeat enemies. So number one in all that is levels are important. Who knew? Especially since the level gap is so high, I would assume there could be some damage penalty from being under-leveled compared to the enemy. I am level 1 here. Number 2, the primary rule for fighting enemies is to break them. Meaning, you need to break the white gauge mirror above their HP with their weaknesses. Not mind break them, you sick, twisted fool. So it has the same element system, basically, as Honkai Impact. But one quality of life here is that enemies' weaknesses are displayed at the top of the enemies as HP bars and gauge bars. Once they are broken, they are stunned and unable to attack, and you deal a lot of damage as you break them. So what I quickly realized as I died, knowing that now is, I bought 2 fire, 1 wind, and 1 ice to that fight. The problem was the enemy was weak to physical, and not any of those other elements that I brought. So I was essentially doing no damage on top of the possible damage penalty you get from being underleveled.
Practice target?
So a simple team swap to the MC instead of Asta solved the entire situation for me. And that will hold true later on, as I had to switch again later on in some of the fights. Aside from elements though, characters also have paths that are essentially their roles and weapon types all rolled into one. There's buffers, tanks, healers, debuffers, single target damage dealers, AoE damage dealers, and destruction, which is a little mix of both single target and AoE, but generally weaker than those specialized roles. So the general strategy that you end up with is mixing and matching these roles depending on the enemy's weakness and synergy with other units. Of course, there's also energy recharge, crit stats, artifacts, constellations called eidolons, and many more other things similar to Genshin. But unlike Genshin, this combat system doesn't seem as deep. It is a turn-based system that does have a lot of potential for combos and killing everything in one wave with perfect setups. But I just don't think it is enough to make you want to play the game purely because you enjoy the theory crafting for good teams and its combat. I could be wrong, but the game is more simple than complex. But for me, however, that is a good thing, as the more I play Star Rail, the more I'll treat it casually and enjoy the experience for what it is. But of course, the endgame modes might change that, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So with the combat a bit out of the way, we do some simple puzzles and we fight a boss that I finish off with one badass Himiko burst. This isn't a goodbye. It's a see you later. And she leaves the party. Asta tells us to join the Astral Express, but before that, we meet Herta. Now, I didn't talk about it at the start, but she kind of owns the space station that got attacked by the Legion, blah, blah, blah. And she hid something that was now inside of us called a Stellarion, and we got awakened by Kafka, blah, blah. You know this, okay? You know this. She unlocks an interesting experience, though, called the Simulated Universe, which is the roguelike mode of the game that seems rather promising. After defeating an enemy, you receive 3 blessings, from which you can choose one that actually does give you game-altering buffs, like the one that gives you 1 turn shield every time a round ends, or the one that deals quake damage after an enemy attacks you while with a shield. And this could possibly end up as one of the end-game game modes, or it already is, I don't really know, in Star Rail. Because we already know that they have an abyss, as you can get their free Shangling counterpart after you clear floor 3. So perhaps the game might get more complex as time goes on, with new enemies added or new effects or skills introduced. However, since the element system is more similar to the rock, paper, scissors system that Honkai Impact has, I would be more willing to bet that we'll have weather effects soon that give buffs to certain elements or certain paths, and especially based on how gauges work that lead to breaks. The most meta unit that has the combination of path and element that breaks the new boss's gauges the fastest is the best one. So if there are leaderboards, then I can assure you that there will be some form of power creep in this game. But I digress. Let's get back to business. I know I said I loved Himiko, but after the little interactions we've had with Herta best girl. And after her space station shenanigans done, now we can board the Astral Express. Talk to a lot of people, and there's a lot of dialogue after that. If you enjoy the characters, perhaps it could be enjoyable to you. But the gist so far, in my opinion, is March is basically Yoimiya. Dan Hong is responsible, distant, unapproachable, but deep down, he probably cares, I guess. And Herta is an eccentric genius that occasionally makes funny jokes. Oh, and there's also Welt, you know, the first Herrscher, and Himiko's Himiko. You get it. One more thing to note is that facial expressions in this game is a whole lot better than any other game Hoyoverse has put out. If you've watched that one Zenless Zone Zero promo cutscene from Hoyoverse, it's a step down from that, but stepped up from Genshin Impact's cutscenes. Definitely. It's just the way the mouth moves and how the emotions are portrayed. It feels slightly more real and the animations more smooth. And this is actually what helped me enjoy the dialogue more. And trust me, there are times where I utterly detest Genshin Impact's cutscenes. With all of the dialogue drivel out of the way, we go on to our first destination, a planet called Yarillo 6. Or Jarillo? Yeah, whatever, you know what it is. So, this is where the first arc of the game technically happens, and we are introduced to this game's version of a ley line. Finally. I've been capped out for like 4 or 5 hours at this point, and I was desperate, man. The min-max inside of me was saying, where can I spend this goddamn resin? So of course, I naturally spammed the EXP books. If you remember in Genshin, it's well known that when it's early on in the game and you have low AR levels, what's best to farm is these EXP books, because even if you had access to artifacts, it's not the best decision to farm them as they are low level and will be quickly replaced once you reach AR 45. So, I spammed it despite the warning that I'm level 1 and the enemies are level 17 or something. So, this is a good time to mention that there is an auto battle function in this game. And trust me, if you are under-leveled or under-geared, you are gonna need it. Because in this instance of this ley line, I ran a triple ice lineup with Dan Hung, and these ice bats were just so tanky that I put it on auto battle and just walked away. Came back after like 10 or 15 minutes. I think this further illustrates the importance of levels, especially early on. As well, that's how it works in gacha games or in RPGs in general, and as soon as I level my main team, till out level 20 each, the time it took to clear these ley lines more than halved. Anyway, after doing that, we meet a peculiar man named Sampo. And, why is there no one as buff as he is in Genshin Impact? Anyway, he's Star Rail's version of Ito, basically. I mean, Ito wishes he had this dude's body, am I right? After that, we go through a series of quests as we meet Japard, fight him, and then tell him we are not his enemy after being betrayed by Sampo. Then we are introduced to the city of Bellabog? What a stupid name. I'll probably get bashed for saying that, but the name sounds dumb, okay? And then in this city, important things to note are that we meet Bronya. Post Honkai Bronya is better, by the way. And we meet Kokolia, who is conveniently Bronya's mother in this world too. Who would have fucking guessed? Anyway, it is here that I realize that I like the cast of characters in Honkai Star Rail more in the first 6 hours of me playing this game than in Genshin Impact. I'm comparing this game to Genshin because I'm a Genshin player. Anyway, what makes so much difference is how we actually have a party of people accompanying us in this journey. Unlike in Teva, where we are a lone traveler that never really travels with anyone except Paimon, she is the only constant. So far, I am really liking the contrast of March and Dan Hang. They complement each other as foils to one another. Dan Hung is a pessimist realist that has a playful style, while March is a happy-go-lucky vibes that make her feel like someone you can rely on to never go insane. And then there's you, who has a specialized power in blunt humor that just adds to the dynamic that these two characters already have. And what you have is a more lovable experience because you know that these are the characters you probably will be with for quite some time, simply because, I mean, you know, it's the astral train. You travel from planet to planet. You know what I mean? Who else is gonna be on that train with you? Aside from Himiko and Welt, I guess. Perhaps. Or it could just be that I like their personalities more than the ones in Genshin. Who knows? So, after various uneventful quests, we reach the level-gated quest portion of the game. After Seely shows up, we are greeted by a level 14 in order to proceed pop-up, and this is where we finally unlock dailies. Hell yeah, after 6 hours of playing, now I can finally do my dailies. These, though, are like just one daily quest in various battle missions, such as killing 20 enemies, or killing an enemy with an ultimate that you can do while you're farming ley lines with your resin, which is, in my opinion, pretty convenient. The dailies are much faster than Genshin's, and overall, an upside. So, at about 6 hours, I've finally experienced much of the game that the game no longer allows me to proceed. Now, I know this isn't the whole experience. I've only barely scratched the surface. However, as I played the game more and more, there were things that I liked: the turn-based combat, simple combat style, the characters, and the auto-combat function, along with very short dailies. And there were things that I disliked, like the same old out-of-place jargon and dialogue, potential artifact grind that comes with it. The same type of progression loops that will lead to burnout or boredom is evident. The things I liked could easily be the reasons why I quit the game, because they have gone stale like they have with Genshin Impact. And here is the most obvious of truths, I guess, and that you didn't really need to watch somebody play the first 6 hours of this game to actually understand and figure out, I guess. At first, I liked the game. Then you slowly realize as you play this that it is just Genshin, but turn-based in a different world. It was as if the systems in Genshin were ran over by a raptor shroom in Sumeru, died and isekai'd into the world of Honkai Star Rail, except it has a way less of a complex combat system and it's turn-based. And that's it. For those that love playing Genshin Impact, you will probably love this game based on design alone. But after that, after the illusion has been broken and you realize that the combat isn't for you, you'll end up not liking it and just uninstalling completely. It's Genshin, but without the best parts of Genshin. Arguably the exploration and arguably the reaction system are not present here. People will still fall for the hype though. I mean, it's free to play. What is there to lose aside from your time? But some already know. This is just the same old, same old. Trying it out for yourself and dipping is the ideal position to have, just so you have no regrets. However, the thing is, if you've never played a gacha game in the first place, or have never even liked Genshin when you found out it was a gacha, or if Genshin was your first gacha and you don't want anything to do with it, then you should never play Honkai Star Rail. Nothing will change. Hoyoverse's game structure and systems will still remain the same. So save yourself some time. This game has the same problems that plagues Genshin Impact, and I'm sure most people would not want that to be doubled in their lives. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, a like would greatly be appreciated, as it does help the channel a lot. Oh, and also the subscribe button is as free as Honkai Star Rail is, so come on now, you don't want to. As for me, I'll be continuing to play Honkai Star Rail as I am caught in the web of Hoyoverse games. And that's a video dropping next week. And this is our parting. Farewell. Slime King. Twitch. Discord. Celebratory Jackie.